Hey guys, this is Kevin Kane with Precision Powerlifting Systems. I'm joined by the one and only Jay Birdie, Jay Birdie Fitness.
I never get in the camera anymore.
Yeah, for a reason. So you're not a fucking star. So what we're going to talk about today is, so I posted on Instagram just asking people how important they think like the mental pieces of sport in general are about powerlifting. And then the majority of the responses, so the smallest response that I got was 30 to 40% for the mental part of training. So if we feel it's that important, my next question was, what do people do to actually train that portion of the sport itself, that mental portion? And most people don't have responses for it. It's kind of like, oh, you either have it or you don't, or the training itself kind of takes care of it. There's no focus on the mental aspect of it. And I've even had like conversations like where people were, when they were bringing up confidence, it just seemed like people don't really grasp the idea of what confidence actually is. And confidence is an emergent skill. It's not something that people just inherently have or something that just kind of miraculously shows up one day. And it's very context driven, right? So like personally, in terms of lifting heavy weights at this point, I've been doing it for 6 years. I'm confident in that. But if I had to play a game of tennis, I would not be as confident in my skills in tennis because I haven't prepared myself to be able to take on a complicated task. If I'm playing like my 13-year-old daughter in tennis, maybe I'm going to be confident. But if I'm playing tennis against somebody who actually has experience in the sport, or golf, or any other athletic endeavor or academic endeavor that I'm not prepared to handle, I'm not going to have confidence in my abilities to succeed at that task. What I could have is an arrogance and overconfidence in my abilities of doing other things that carry over into that, but that'll quickly get rectified when the outcome shows for itself under those circumstances. So in terms of lifting, I think, you know, when I search on the internet for some like ideas of what people do, just throw in like little Google searches, it seems like, oh, train sub-maximally a lot. So if you just build a lot of success with repetitions in the gym, all of a sudden confidence should emerge. The problem with that is you're not putting yourself into difficult situations that actually require you to be confident. So if you're always doing easy things in the gym and you're not challenging your skill set, and when I say skill set, it's not just your physical skill set. If you're not challenging your mental skill set, how are you going to advance those skills? So you need to do things that make you a little bit uncomfortable. Not so uncomfortable that you feel threatened, but a little bit uncomfortable where you actually feel challenged. And the difference between threat and challenge, it could be the exact same stressor, and it's our perspective on that stressor, they actually use different areas of the brain. The threat kind of makes us lock up, makes us more tense, and it doesn't allow us to perform smoothly. Where a challenge, we're gonna have that increased heart rate, the increased awareness. We're gonna have these situations where we can actually perform at a higher level. So it's two different brain segments between threat and challenge. And we wanna put ourselves into challenging situations, not threatful situations, because when we're under threat, we're gonna react very, very differently. So confidence is an emergent skill, something that comes, one of the, I forget where I heard this quote, but you earn the right to do difficult. And you have to earn the right to do difficult things. You can't just lift a bunch of submaximal weights all of the time and then be encountered with a weight you've never handled before at a competition underneath the lights, and if there's something at stake, you haven't earned the right to do difficult. And yes, maybe you get that weight at that given time, but it's a moral victory. And at some point, the lack of mental skills is going to catch up. Usually as the talent pool gets deeper and deeper, the need for those mental skills become increasingly more important. So when you think of like professional sports, all of those athletes are equally talented. They are the 1% of talent in their given sports at that highest level. The thing that really separates them apart from one another is their mental skills. So this is a very commonly trained aspect of professional sports to begin with, but because of all the parallels between sports and life, this is really important to developing these mental skills so that we can be good at our lives outside of sport. It's one of the great gifts of sport. All right, so how do we build confidence? So it starts so your confidence is your self-talk, right? So the thing with the self-talk though is a lot of people be like, oh, I told myself that I can get this next rep. But if you haven't earned the right to actually say that and believe those words, you can bullshit everybody else, but you absolutely will not bullshit yourself. You'll know that that's not the case, and your ego will sabotage your performance so that you get that feedback back, knowing that you're not confident in those words. So you have to earn the right to say those words to yourself. So it is your positive self-talk. But there's a lot of steps that have to happen for us to get to the point where we believe those words. So the very first part that we need to be aware. So a lot of times when I ask lifters, what's going on in your head before a lift? And this will be a specific situation. And what I get back a lot of times is, oh, I was thinking to keep my chest up, and like these little like technical maybe feedback cues that they're thinking about, that's their conscious awareness. But the thing is in your unconscious brain, there's conversations that are happening there. And the first step that we need to be aware of those conversations that we're having with ourselves at those moments in time. I don't give a fuck that you were thinking about keeping your chest up. What I want to hear is I want to hear what that ego, that self-talk, what it was saying to yourself while these things were happening. And whether you're aware of that voice, it's there and it's having an impact on your performance, whether it's going to be a positive or a negative outcome. And the very, very first step is being aware of where those conversations come. So one of the things that we could do to increase awareness is one, like meditation, I think is great, right? Because when you're trying to focus on one thing, your mind's going to constantly wander, and you're going to start to become aware of where your thoughts are, especially because you're just practicing that awareness of where your thoughts are going. You can kind of take this same concept and bring it into the gym. So in between sets, if you look at the barbell and you start like visualizing your next repetition, right? Pushing your knees out, whatever it is that you're focusing on, right? That visualization process. And you just focus on that barbell and you focus on the things that you're supposed to do. But then you become aware of when your mind wanders, and pay attention to where it wanders too. You know, does that self-talk start coming in and start telling you that I don't know if I can lift this weight, I suck at this, I suck at that. Maybe your mind's going into a situation where it's like, I had this negative situation at work, and you start thinking about that, and that negative mindset, that negative self-talk from a different area of your life is going to creep into your training. It's going to have an impact on your performance in that next set. So being aware, using those meditation skills of looking at the barbell and being aware of where your mind is wandering, and then bringing it back. So using your breath, bringing it back. And this is why it's so important that we have our intent, right? Our purpose, what it means to actually participate in this sport to us on a very deep level, right? So your breathing comes back. My personal statement is stand your ground. So taking on all challenges, I'm going to commit with conviction, and I'm going to compete as hard as I can, right? So that's what that means to me. But saying it, that those three words helps kind of give me motivation and give me confidence to go out there and commit to the next repetition. So using your breathing, saying that statement can help bring you back to the moment. But you need to be aware that you're losing that mental focus. And you need to be aware of where your self-talk is going in order to bring it back and redirect it. And this requires repetitions. You can't just do this day one and be like, oh yeah, no, I'm confident because I told myself I can do this, right? So training needs to go in line with this part of it. Training has to have consequences, and these consequences have to be psychological and physical, of course, to get your attention, right? So there has to be a weight in the bar that makes your mind wander to those negative places or those positive places once we develop this skill. But there's always going to be negative thoughts. You can't just avoid them, and you can't ignore them. If you do ignore them, they're screaming in the background, and they're absolutely still going to impact performance. But what you want is you want them to come in, and you want to acknowledge them judgment-free, and then you want to refocus your attention into something that's going to help impact your performance in a more positive manner. So for us, that's our intent statement, our personal statement, our vision, our purpose, whatever people want to call it. We have something that's built into these situations to give us this little boost of motivation at that given time, and this little boost of confidence to do what we're supposed to do under those given circumstances. And it's also why it's really important to have definitions of what success means to you personally, what high performance means to you personally. And these should be arbitrary things that don't let you off of the hook, but they fall back to giving your best effort and doing your best for the most part. And then you can always be success. You can always perform at a high level for what you're capable of doing at that given moment in time, right? So it just helps you deal with setbacks, and it helps you view failure in a much different light so that you can learn from those mistakes and you can continually get better. So it starts with that general awareness, and then it starts by learning how to control our self-talk. So once we're aware of the words we're saying to ourselves, we need to refocus our attention on something that means something to us personally deep down inside. It can't be these arbitrary statements, and in most cases you can't use my statement because it's not going to mean something to you personally. You have to have something deep down inside, that purpose, that intent, that drive to want to do these things. And you need to have a lot of self-reflection. So you can't have awareness. You can't have this self-awareness without self-reflection. So you need to understand who you are inside, because that's who's having that conversation with you. And that's what's directly impacting your performance. So once you identify with who you are inside, you find that purpose, you become more aware of those negative thoughts, you refocus those negative thoughts into something that's a lot more positive and meaningful to you, and you put yourself into situations that challenge yourself to have to control these thoughts, to have to be aware of these thoughts. And then you reflect upon your performance after the results are given. So your results are just nothing more than feedback that you need to view judgment-free. So whether you make or you miss a repetition, it's feedback for you to be able to take in that information and then make the best decision to move forward. So in a lot of cases where we lose the focus and the concentration and the confidence that comes later on is in the transitions. So let's use an example. Let's say we just hit a squat and it was pretty hard, but we have one more single that we have to take. And we're sitting there and we're thinking about the weight to put on the bar. Do I put 10 pounds on, or do I put 5 pounds on, or do I put 15 pounds on? When you get into this thought process, you're getting lost in the moments between the moments here when you're trying to put the perfect weight on the bar, because you're starting to fear the outcome that might result from the choice that you're making at this given moment, right? So now you're attaching judgment to your choices. And now you're starting to doubt yourself a little bit, because if you had this detachment almost from your performance and you were sitting there judgment free and you were taking in all the feedback and you were aware of everything that was happening, you would know what weight to put on the bar. And then you would go out and perform and see what happens and take that feedback. So, there are times where it's like, okay, this feels good. I'm detached. I'm seeing my performance. I'm going to put 15 pounds on. You put 15 pounds on and you miss. Well, now you're updating your information bank. So the next time you're in the same situation, you're going to lean a little lighter probably. But what we get stuck is we get lost in this transition. And then within this transition, we're so worried about what's going to happen based off of the decision we're making at that current moment in time. We're in the future somewhere. We're not in the present moment. So it's better to make a decision quickly and then just learn from that feedback instead of being indecisive. So that hesitation actually, it sets off a different, uses different brain pathways than what you're going to want to use in your high performance. So if you think of optimal performance being in that flow state, you're getting bumped out of that flow state to try to think about what weight to put on the bar, because you become overanalyzing, overthinking, and it becomes almost like this distraction, this negative thinking loop that you get stuck in. So you need to make a decision quickly. Don't get stuck in those transitions so that you can stay in that performance peak. But again, you have to be able to do this judgment free. So if you start putting judgment on top of these decisions, you're going to start running into some problems, because that judgment eventually is going to form our self-talk. So if it's like, ooh, I don't know if I'm strong enough to be able to handle 15 pounds right now, right? But then you put it on the barbell, you're not confident going into that repetition, right? And again, not being present in the current moment, you can't make the best decisions possible anyways. And if there's judgment in there, our emotional brain is starting to talk to our rational brain. There's a conversation happening there that you need to be aware of. You need to stop. You need to recenter yourself. You need to detach your judgments from it, make a decision, perform, receive the information, and then you just constantly repeat this process. And this has to be done over and over and over. And these mental skills need to be trained outside of the gym too, detached from the physical pieces. You have to be able to sit with yourself. So like 10 minutes of meditation per day. Sit with yourself. Train your brain to be able to come back to the present moment, judgment-free, multiple times. Do those repetitions. Put yourself into the gym. Do those repetitions. And then it's just putting it all together. Over time, as you start building the ability to challenge your skill set, to be in the moment, one, be self-aware through self-reflection, be in the moment, judgment-free, make decisions, accept the feedback, judgment-free, and then keep repeating the process. Eventually you learn how to focus, then you learn how to refocus, and then as your skill level, right? So when you look at our pyramid where confidence sits, so you train those baseline mental skills, and then as your technique improves, as your strength levels start to improve, you're getting more practice, more time under the barbell, eventually confidence emerges. And it emerges in the context-driven sport that we're utilizing, right? Your confidence in powerlifting might help you have some tools to be a better public speaker at work or to speak up in a meeting room or something like that. It might not. You might struggle under those situations and have to focus your attention on those a little bit more in order to have confidence in those specific situations. But in terms of like athletics, I think powerlifting, you'll have confidence from doing powerlifting, but if you had to go fight somebody in mixed martial arts or something, you're probably not going to have the same level of confidence that you would underneath a barbell, just because the context is very different and you're not as prepared to handle that situation. So a big part of confidence is knowing that you put the work in, you have a plan, you executed that plan, and you're prepared to handle the challenges that are in front of you. If you're unprepared to handle those challenges, that's where threat comes in, right? If you're unprepared, you know you're not prepared for it, and that's where that negative self-talk comes in. So even though our confidence is nothing more than our positive self-talk, it's positive self-talk that we need to believe in. And we believe in it by practicing, by planning, by practicing, by preparing, and challenging ourselves on a daily basis in order to develop these skills. And over time, confidence emerges. I think, like I was saying, I think too often we neglect this aspect of it, and it's just one of those that it's either you have it or you don't. It's, oh, training, if you make all your reps in training, you'll develop it. But we have a very limited understanding, I think, as coaches and athletes within this sport of how to train these mental skills and how these mental skills are emergent skills, just like strength is an emergent skill, just like technical aspects of training are an emergent skill. And visualization, just like we do for our lifts themselves, we need to visualize ourselves in not just positive situations, but negative situations. We need to view our training session and be like, okay, this weight feels heavy, now what? And put ourselves in that position where we can actually feel the feelings we're gonna feel at those current moments in time and have a plan so that when it happens, you go into the gym and that weight feels heavy, you already know what to do because you've already experienced it. You being in that moment of actually executing it and having to make that decision, you've already made that decision. You've planned and prepared for that to happen. So this visualization process of not just the positive things, but also the negative things so that you are prepared to handle these situations in the gym is extremely important. So for me personally, like, as thinking about my training session, it only takes like 10, 15 minutes maybe. You just kind of put these images in your brain of like how today's going to go, how you'd like it to go. So have like that positive one where it's like, you know, you're just viewing yourself executing at high levels and hitting a certain number that's on the sheet or whatever it is. And then you have to have these other visualizations of what if this happens? What do I do next? And that's part of planning, that's part of preparing, it's having that mental imagery and going through that process. But again, confidence is an emergent skill, it's not just something you have. And when coaches are talking about, oh, if we do this, if we just build repetitions, they're gonna develop confidence. If we make sure we keep the RPEs at a certain level and they're hitting these weights, we're gonna build confidence. And like what you'll see is, of course it's not an all or nothing, but in some cases what you'll see they might start at 90% singles or something. I'm just making something up. So they might start at 90% singles, and then as that gets easier, 92%. And then you're slowly building confidence by putting them into these situations. And that's great, it'll definitely happen. But there's still a big difference between 95% and 100%. So like 95% think second attempt. Most people aren't as nervous for a second attempt as they are for a weight that maybe they've hit one other time or they've never even attempted before in their lives. There's going to be differences in terms of their confidence under those situations because they've never done it. Right now, of course, when you start thinking of it from a programming standpoint, well, I can't just have people lift 95 to 100% of the comp lifts to develop confidence with 95 to 100%. And that's absolutely true. But that's where the max effort method comes in. So even for us on week 1, I tell them to leave 5 to 10 pounds on the barbell. If they could only lift 5 or 10 pounds more, you're talking that's 97% effort that's going into that lift, if not more, at that given time. And then week 3, they're allowed to challenge themselves at times, and you're talking, we're getting into that 100% new PR range for a variation that we're doing. However, absolute weight range, it's about 85 to 92% of their comp lift. So we're not using the actual loads, but the actual effort and the consequences of missing a rep are the exact same. It just has it has less of a recovery cost when we're putting them in different positions. But of course, competition itself, especially if something's on the line, is going to have different mental aspects to it than training's typically going to have. So there have to be times in training where the coach makes the lifters uncomfortable and have to deal with something that maybe they haven't thought about before, maybe they haven't planned for, and maybe they're not prepared to handle. And you want to see them put the tools that you've developed, the tools that you kind of have guided them to develop over time, you want to see them put those tools to the test under certain conditions. And this is easier said than done at times because there are recovery costs, but there are always opportunities that kind of afford themselves without having to plan for this. So just because we're amateur athletes, everybody has jobs, they have stuff going on outside of the gym. So there are going to be moments where it's like I haven't slept well, I have a lot of work stuff going on, my nutrition's been off, and I'm supposed to hit a max effort lift today. And it's week 3 and I'm supposed to beat week 1 by 5 pounds. Now here's a real opportunity to have them earn the right to do something difficult. So if they've been doing all the little things in the background, doing their meditation, working on the visualization, being judgment-free in the moment, making training decisions. And now we're just gonna raise the stakes a little bit. So now they're gonna be forced to use these skills under a higher duress situation than what maybe they're used to. So in that situation there, it's like, here is a real opportunity to challenge yourself to compete at the best of your abilities. And this is why it's really important to have definitions for success and to have definitions for high performance. So, and these definitions should not include external outcomes. It should include process-oriented vocabulary and definitions. So basically what it should be is, I'm gonna give my best effort, and if I do those things, if I give my best effort in focusing and refocusing my attention, I put all my physical effort into it, I do the best I can in this current moment in time, then I'm a success and I'm performing at a high level. And then I'm gonna take that feedback and I'm gonna reflect upon it, and I'm gonna learn from these mistakes. So like, reflection is extremely important for learning from mistakes. So it's not just you miss and then it's like, well, I need more of these squats. No. You need to spend time thinking about that training session and really going through every step of the process. What's happening between the ears is a huge playing field that we need to assess at the same time too. So reflect on that training session, learn from those mistakes, apply the necessary changes, and continue to move forward. So when the program gives you these opportunities, take them as opportunities to really challenge yourself and to earn the right to do difficult things. And when you do that enough, whether you make or miss the rep, it doesn't matter. If you competed to your best abilities at that current moment in time, and you've reflected upon them and learned from the things that maybe didn't go so well, you're performing at a high level. And over time, that is how you make progress. That's how you earn the right to do more and more difficult things. Once we become confident in our skill set and we're able to handle these situations and compete at our best and do those things, when you develop that and you continue doing repetitions like that over time, that's where poise under pressure comes in. Poise under pressure is just confidence on steroids. It's you being able to be the person that you are under any given circumstance. It doesn't matter what they throw at you, you're able to compete at your highest level. because you've earned the right to do so. And this is what we see at the highest levels of sport. Like think of like Tom Brady when I think of poise, Michael Jordan, people like that. But probably, the majority of the elite have poise under pressure. It's just the difference between them and everybody else, right? It's what's happening between those ears. So confidence can't just be trained by sets and reps and intensities in the gym. There have to be tools given to each lifter. There's baseline foundational skills that need to be developed that underlie confidence, that need to get stronger and stronger for confidence to emerge over time. And they need to challenge themselves to do a little bit more than what they're capable of every given day. So if you're scared of public speaking, have a conversation with a stranger for 5 minutes. Like there's ways that you can challenge this skill set on a given day that doesn't have a massive recovery cost. And that's something that needs to be taken into consideration too with the coach, is how can I really maximize my repetitions with this stuff? And get creative with the way in which you do it. And life offers a lot of opportunities to work on all of these skills. So that's how we build confidence, I guess, over time. The program does need to complement those things, right? It needs to put lifters in situations that challenges their skill set in the context of the sport. And the coach needs to analyze that, see where they're at, and then make decisions as we move forward. But I basically said everything I want to say, so you can follow me on Instagram. It's KWKNR Team Precision Powerlifting Systems.